Welcome, everyone. My name is Michelle Finizio. I am the Chief Revenue Officer of FounderMade, and I work directly with our brand and resource partner community to connect them with the resources they need to scale. So these sessions, these power hours are incredibly special to me. Thank you so much for those of you who typically join us. Welcome back. For those of you who have never joined us, welcome to the party. These are a ton of fun. Think of them as office hours or master classes. You have the opportunity to ask and answer your hardest questions. You have experts here who are joining us from New York City, which is really exciting. They're actually at their facilities. So I did ask them if maybe at the end we can get a little tour. We'll see how the time goes. But again, thank you so much for being here. You do have a chat box at the bottom where you can throw in those questions. So throughout the event, I will be moderating. Throw the questions in, I will see them, we will get to them, we'll be able to work them into the conversation. If not, we'll look to get to them at the end or follow up with you after. So definitely take advantage. Today's Power Hour is titled How to Optimize Operations When Scaling Nationally. As your business grows, it is important to optimize operations to meet increasing demands and satisfy customer expectations. During today's session, we'll be joined by Guy Roney, the CEO, and Joshua Abramson, the CFO of NutriFresh. NutriFresh is the country's most advanced platform for national perishable e-commerce fulfillment. So you can think of this as a masterclass where you'll learn how to meet customer expectations and increase customer retention, how to manage costs of moving inventory from multiple warehouses and carriers, what to consider when deciding between moving inventory to multiple locations or paying higher prices to ship long distances, how to identify where your biggest concentrations of customers are and when it makes sense to move inventory close to them, how to implement an effective marketing strategy that targets customers within those key demographics, and more. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Guy Roney and Joshua Abramson. Hello, hello.
How are you?
Hello. It's so great to have you. So to kick off, I'd love to actually have both of you introduce yourselves. We'd love to hear about your background. It's always great also to hear, what a couple of the steps were that really got you to this place, because I think everyone here, everyone's building. So Guy, let's start with you.
Guy Roney, been in the consumer goods industry for about 20 years. Mostly from the operational marketing CEO positions, usually turnaround, smaller brands to grow. Found the NutriFresh opportunity and understood the huge disruptive potential it has. Started it 5 years ago and been having fun ever since.
Awesome. Joshua?
I'm Josh Abramson. I'm the CFO. I grew up in corporate finance, big corporations like GE and GE Capital, and for about the last 10 years have been doing more entrepreneurial things, startups and turnarounds. Guy and I have been working on this for a little over 4+ years, 4.5 years, since we started this. So happy to talk more about about NutriFresh and where we started. NutriFresh started as a turnaround. We were actually the largest cold pressed juice manufacturer in the country,
Wow.
with an interesting e-commerce fulfillment business that happened to exist inside of that operation. And as we took over the company as a really underperforming, struggling company, to turn it around to what it is, we identified that as really the interesting element for us to build on. And so
from a so juice maker, we became a great fulfillment house.
That's so cool. By the way, there's a company called Rainforest Distribution. They're out. You might know those. Yep. I think he started as an acai guy and then became a massive distributor. But so, it's always crazy to know, as you continue to create efficiencies and go towards where the market needs you, where the journey can lead, which is awesome. Yeah. And now let's go through. I'd love to hear what the mission is. Obviously we know where you came from, but what is the mission today?
So the mission is to become an all-encompassing platform for perishable. We also serve non-perishable, but mainly perishable brands. Guys who are doing ambient, non-refrigerated fulfillment have it easy, right? If it gets there a day later, no customer may complain, but no big deal. With us, any minute over the hour 48 and the product actually goes bad. So we're trying to build a physical and tech platform, and we're pretty successful in it, and growing rapidly. Of physical locations, we currently have 9, and the tech to support how to best reach every customer in the country from the minimum amount of facilities, because you simply don't want to replicate your inventory 9 times.
Right.
But then the cost will kill you. So we're working on how to optimize your shipments using data analysis, to a point where you ship out of the least amount of places, but still get to the largest amount of customers with a 1-day ground. So
Amazing.
you can actually maintain a margin.
Huge. Okay. So we're going to get into a lot of these sub points. I know everyone's excited to hear about margins, speed, efficiency. I mean, I think these are all words that, like, people might be wearing on t-shirts as they walk around New York City. So last year was a crazy year, 2020. Whoa. I mean, we can all acknowledge that. What are the trends and learnings that you saw come out of 2020? What do brands really need to know, especially as it's crazy. We're already in May of 21. Would love to hear from your perspective.
Yeah. Look, I'll start. I think we saw an awful lot of things happen last year. By and large, any company that was in the space doing direct consumer sales of perishable products, food stuff, drink products, should have grown multifold last year. The ones that didn't identified critical failures in whatever their business model was, that they either figured out how to address or they went away. And I think there were a couple things that fed into that, especially in early to mid 2020, with a lot of sort of traditional brick and mortar going offline and they stopped spending on their SEO. The bang for the buck for the DTC brands that were selling that they got out of their SEO was tremendous. They got 4 to 5 times the buy for every dollar of spend, and that was really impactful for them. It turned into a lot of volume for us. I think that we've seen trends in moving away from, if not entirely away from, significantly away from fresh fulfillment. A lot more frozen product, a lot of other, whether it's HPP product or other stuff that has some product longevity to it. I would say that 2 years ago, we had a pretty significant amount of our volume was fresh fulfillment, stuff that was manufactured within hours of being shipped out. And it turns out that that's a pretty tough model to sustain from a production cost efficiency and shipping and survivability in shipping.
Yep.
And I think by and large, our brands have found that consumers don't have the negative stigma towards frozen that, a previous generation would have had.
As long as the ingredients are clean, consumers became much more educated about reading labels. And as long as the ingredients are clean, they're willing to accept the frozen.
Right.
And think of it from a quality wise, if you ship it fresh and it arrives, it sits there for 3 days, it's 3-day-old food. When it's frozen, the freshness is actually maintained.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because I'm thinking immediately of Daily Harvest, who obviously saw tremendous growth over the last few years in frozen, and a ton of others that's in that category that too. Based on that, where do you see the biggest opportunities, and especially also for your existing clients? Are you looking at that and advising them in certain directions based on where that trend is heading?
So we have multiple processes that we run with our clients. Mainly, we have a quarterly review where we are covering their past year, past 6 months, past quarter, whatever period the customer wants us to focus on, and simulate how would it look in one of 15 different scenarios, right? How would it look if you added an extra facility? How would it look if you changed the facility? How would it look if you ship only ground? How did it look if you ship? Needless, plenty of examples. And what the key element of us having to keep our heads through is we recommend, we educate, and the customer is the one making the decision, right? So, and you see the ones that succeeded are the ones that are willing to embrace the data, right? When we all started it, put good products in a box, people will love it, it's going to grow. Not really the case if you have issues with the logistics, if you have issues with many other things, right? So what we're walking them through is how to design better packaging. Again, we give them 5 different options. You choose. Customer experience is yours. How do we look at multiple things along the way and a lot of pitfalls and hurdles? How do we help them go through it?
Well, so much of our community is founders, right? So I'd love to hear, it's always great to hear, how friendly to the founder is the actual experience, and how do you really handhold people who might be just getting into making these decisions, or maybe hitting a moment where they're outgrowing, maybe who became that first partner for them. Like how do you manage that dynamic, and what's the full spectrum of resources that you really are offering?
Yeah. What we think we offer to our customers is the ability to reach a level of cost efficiency and scalability much faster than they would on their own. To Guy's point before, we ship out of 9 facilities. I would say that we don't have any customers currently shipping out of more than probably 4 at a given time.
Correct.
I think that one of the things we find is that sort of in an interesting sort of way things happen. The smaller a company is, the more aggressively they want to be in as many facilities as they possibly can be, right? So we have customers that come in that are shipping a couple of 100 shipments a week, and they want to be in all 9 facilities off the bat, right? Which doesn't make any sense. And conversely, we have customers who are shipping 30, 40 plus thousand shipments a week that we have to push very hard to get into multiple facilities. And I think there's probably a lesson to be learned in there, right? In terms of understanding and having the ability to keep your arms around everything you're doing and not spread yourself too thin. So, one of the things that we do, as Guy said, we think that we're pretty good advisors. At all times, it's your brand. The language we use is you're our customer. The person you're shipping to is your consumer, right? We advise our customers, but at the end of the day, it's their consumer experience that has to be managed. And we don't want that to be us, right? That's supposed to be your secret sauce. That said, we think that the brands who are really successful with us are the ones that keep pretty focused teams on growing an online marketing business and don't look to become operators, right? When you say, not to be too trite about it, but when you sort of stay in your lane as an online marketing company and a brand and a product company, and don't try to become an operator who's overseeing your operator, right? You kind of get a little too many cooks in the kitchen. We have found that the brands that listen and take advice and are collaborative with us end up being really successful. We've had brands that that we shipped their first shipment and are currently shipping 5 or 10,000 shipments a week. And so I think it's knowing when to follow somebody else's advice and when to follow your own head is important.
Super interesting. I have 2 questions actually as follow on to that. I mean, one, the fact that you have been a partner on people shipping their first shipment out, that's exciting. Like, is it the sky's the limit? I mean, as I scale, you scale, and we'll just go into the sunset together, or is there a threshold by which?
So exactly like you said it, right? We shipped from the first one, and then they became too big for one facility. So we have a second and a third and a fourth and a 9th. Some of them may say it's not a physical spread, right? Some of them want to expand to different carriers, to regional. Some of them want to give a unique customer experience, saying we want to deliver only in a 2-hour window. And it's all about, at that point, it's all about rationalizing costs, right? Yes, I can make sure it delivers on 2:51 and 3 seconds. but it's going to cost you $50 a shipment. Is it worth it? Right?
Right.
We have brands who ship $700 a box, $800 a box. They have the margins, and again, 50 was an exaggeration, but they have the margins to get fancier than others. We have guys who are telling me, look, I ship lobster tails that I imported from Japan and A5 Wagyus, and it's $1,000 box. Whatever it is, I cannot have the shipment fail. So you go to the carriers that are a bit higher on price, but you make sure they get there.
By the way, can you give my information to that team? I'd love some.
Oh, I know. We're standing in
Lots
just,
of details in Wagyu.
when they needed friends and family to test with temperature trackers.
Good. By the way, for those listening, if nothing more, reach out to the NutriFresh team to find out more about that. Well, that brings me into the next question, performance metrics. So, I mean, every company, especially if they're venture backed, has to hit certain goals, hit certain margins. How do you work with brands to make sure that they're hitting those performance metrics?
Yeah, so there are certain performance metrics that are within our control, right, and within our sphere, and certain ones that aren't, right? We in other words, we don't drive sales for our customers, right? We don't drive, we're not responsible, we don't touch their SEO and things like that. The things that we are responsible for and drive is performance on shipments in terms of did the right stuff get in the box, right? So your mispick rates, your on-time deliveries, to the extent that we can influence that with carriers. As Guy mentioned before, one of the things that we help scale with is, we have major relationships with obviously the major carriers, FedEx and UPS. And we also ship with seven other regional carriers around the country. And we get pretty good service from all of those guys. So helping to manage and drive success on that side are really important things. So we track those things actively. We track and report those things. I would say that any 3PL or any fulfillment house who's going to do work for you, you're going to want to make sure that you have specific metrics and accountabilities for those things. We certainly sign up for that in our operation. And a lot of that's driven by the complexity of the shipment that you have, right? So we have customers that have everything from the basic, sort of box in a box go, really simple, very few SKUs, to the very, very complicated hundreds of SKU customer with lots of unique consumer touch items that go in the box. They're obviously going to have a higher percentage of issues, and I would certainly encourage brands to think about simplification.
Yes.
Think about efficiency. Think about things that drive operational efficiency in what they do. You'll end up with not only cheaper pricing in terms of what your fulfillment house has to do, but you'll end up with a much more successful performance with your consumers.
Yep.
That makes
one other side note that references something you asked before in this a little bit, but it's kind of an important plug. To the extent that brands are venture backed, that they're not bootstrapping, that they have capital invested from somebody else, I can't tell you the number of customers we've seen who have blown through the capital that they brought in from the outside. Don't look for ways to spend the money, right? Well, look for ways to be really intelligent about it, right? It's very interesting to us. I think we see this somewhat regularly. Customers that will go and land a big investment from private equity, and they'll really stretch to find ways to chew up that capital as fast as possible.
The box become an 8-piece box, and the bow tie needs to be tied. And again, it's the margin, and like we spoke on our previous conversation a few months back, it's how to protect your margin at all costs for the single transaction.
Right.
Volume won't fix it if you're losing on a transaction. One more comment you mentioned about the KPIs, the metrics. The guys who get the best reporting are the guys who work with us and give us, let's say on a Tuesday of every week, a grade report on how we did last week.
Well done.
You'll be shocked how fast we can identify trends within our line and go ahead and fix very, very quickly.
Love
Right?
that.
So, because with us, we scan everything, right? We know who picked the box, we know what items went into the box, we know what day it was, we know what time it was. So if we can see an increased amount of errors on a certain time of a certain shift by the same three guys, we can train or we can understand why. The brands that simply expect you to do better for guys, it's too high, do better. Those are the guys that will have a lot more struggle in finding root causes, right? So again, as Josh said, whoever it is you're working with, be sure to communicate back each individual error. I know it's sometimes a full position on your end that feels like working for someone else, but no, it's working for yourself.
Agreed.
Right? Because no matter what you do, a credit is more expensive than anything else.
Yeah.
I have so much appreciation for that. And it's funny, as I was prepping for this session, I read a recent stat that over 94% of shippers believe making data-driven decisions are important in ensuring on-time and complete order fulfillment and shipping visibility. Makes sense. Based on what you just ran through, right? Like, I'm sure you can get tons of data, but what are the key data points that you need to be really looking for? And especially also, I love a good dashboard, right? And being able to pull reports readily.
Sure.
That's something you guys offer. I'd love to just hear, how you don't spend so much time that you're actually taking your eyes off the ball in some other areas, but you really focus on the key items.
Yeah, one of the things Guy mentioned before was sort of the quarterly or regular review process we do with our customers. Hands down, the most expensive thing for most of our customers, next to product and even inclusive of product in most cases, is the actual shipping cost, right? So understanding how that works and what the elements of fulfillment are, meaning the distance to customer, what zone you're shipping from and to, what classes service, what the dimensions, how the dimensions of the box you're using impact, how much coolant, whether it's gel packs or dry ice, drive weight or other considerations, all those things. There's a lot of analytics that can go into that. And in particular, using dashboards and other data that we can present is looking at your history, whether that's a week, a month, 6 months, a year, whatever it is of your most recent shipments. We can, through the tools we have, draw that out for you based on geography, where it came from, where it went to, how heavy the shipments were, and then we can do scenario analysis, say, what if, instead of only shipping from the East Coast and the West Coast, if we put you in a Texas facility, how would your math have changed, right? And you can show that the incremental value of adding a facility, and vice versa. If you were to say, well, I want to be in all 9 facilities, for example, what's really the tangible difference between being 4 and being in 9? And it turns out, for the most part, it's probably nothing, right? Or close to nothing. So don't spend the money on inventory to do that, because you're already going to get blank, whatever that is, right? And if we took your package and we could trim an inch off of this dimension or that dimension, we could bring you down a certain weight, and that would have this result, et cetera, right? There are things like that we do on an analytical basis and can present out in dashboard to our customers. That's a value we add.
And along with all the dry ice and the ice coming back from a 1 day to a 2 day, what will the cost impact would be on shipping material? What would the cost impact be on dry ice? And by the way, we are doing that on a this is where art takes over science. If you ship 20% of your shipments 1 day instead of 2, how many less credits do we believe you would give? Right? So it's not just the shipping. When I'm 1 day ground away, carrier misses, there's a second day to try. If I'm a 2 day away, carrier misses, usually the product just went back. Right? So it's a lot of complex influencing factors that go in there that we're trying to guide everybody through.
I mean, it's very exciting though, right? I mean, being able to make more money because you save more money and save more money because you had the operational efficiencies and you got the right advisory. That should, for everyone listening, should get you really excited, even though sales and marketing and product, it's all sexy, but this is the stuff that allows you to do all the other stuff, right? So, I mean, to me, when we actually had our kickoff call, you talked about some of the efficiencies you can create in, and you mentioned it, like, shipping supplies and the buying power on being able to drive down even those costs, right? There's so much that goes under the line item of fulfillment. So can we talk a little bit about that and some of the efficiencies you can create if you think more strategically about how to really leverage partners like a NutriFresh when it comes to buying power and some of these other best practices that we talked through?
I mean, of course, the easiest one is the shipping, right? We have an aggregated volume. We have the ability to work with carriers that an independent brand, no matter how big, won't, simply because of the diversifications of shipments, right? If we need to assign a full truck to drive to a certain market, we usually have that volume. So we can save that. Same with purchasing. I would tell you that for some strange reason, boxes, we usually see customers buy on their own because of the branding of the outside and mainly the commoditization of the cardboard market. But when we're looking at dry ice or gel packs and everything, of course, our prices are extremely competitive. And most importantly, when COVID hit, and Josh can elaborate a little bit more, there was a huge shortage of dry ice, right? I mean, it's a factor of oil production. It's a byproduct of oil production.
Yeah.
People stopped driving, planes stopped flying, people couldn't get dry ice. If you were a small buyer on your own, you almost didn't have a shot. With us, we kept going.
Right.
So actually that brings me to another question, because I mean, I didn't even think about the dry ice component of it, but it makes so much sense given your line of work and the types of companies you work with. And it makes me think of, like, what are the other hidden opportunities? It's also interesting to hear about the boxes and customers bringing in their own boxes. Getting this right can give you such a competitive edge. So I'm curious to know if there's other creative ways that you're seeing people bring unique approaches to optimizing their margins to get that edge.
Yeah, I think that dry ice creates some challenges, right? So dry ice, first of all, is not inexpensive. Dry ice is fairly expensive as a product. It can be in scarce supply, as it was middle of last year. If you're shipping express overnight shipments, it costs more. There's a surcharge to it. So to the extent that you can use gel packs instead of dry ice, that's a really good idea. I think that when people invest the time and resource into designing their box well, meaning the fit of their box, their liner, the product inside with their coolant, whether it's dry ice or gel packs or whatever, and they can make sure there's no excess air, which is, air is an enemy of insulation. Those brands do a good job. Now, along with that comes a requirement to be really well edited in terms of what your product offering is. One of the things that we see brands do as they're trying to grow, or where they feel like they're sort of starting to plateau, is dramatically expand their menu, their SKU count and product offering. And without exception, the 80-20 or even 90-10 rule absolutely applies, right? 95. No matter how many times we see this with brands as they start to grow their SKU count, it continues to be a fact that a very small number of their SKUs make up the overwhelming majority of their product. And whether they understand it, identify it, whatever enough, the cost of production goes up significantly. You're doing shorter product runs to make those extra SKUs. your storage costs go up significantly, your box variety changes, your fulfillment changes, your error rates change, all those things increase as you're sort of trying to chase this volume. And you're better served by sticking to what you do well and keeping a really edited product suite than by expanding that.
Oh, that really hits home. I so appreciate that, because we see brands do that all the time. Of course, even internally at FounderMade, we've had that same conversation, especially coming out of this year with so many learnings and really being so kind of data centric. And I'm going to shift the conversation a bit. And actually, before I do that, by the way, for listeners out there, take advantage, because drop in, and I'd love to know who you are and what kind of business you're building. Because if we can drill down on getting you some quick tips on how to create some efficiencies for you and your business, throw them in, and we can hopefully get into the weeds a bit with you and get some quick responses, because this is great. And if not, the NutriFresh team will get back to you. But jumping back now, back on track. Trend wise, I was reading this trend report, and it's funny, with all the crazy shortages that we saw this past year, I read something where it said that there's now, use of mobile robots as an example, and other kind of mobile devices as it pertains within the 3PL world, right? So I'd love to just hear what you're seeing, what brands need to know about this. Is this something that every company needs to have as part of the 3PL offering? Would love to hear about that.
Yeah. That's an interesting topic. It's funny. I think that a couple things. One, it's probably less critically important from the brand's perspective, what kind of automation is in a facility, than it is from the 3PLs themselves. I mean, I can tell you, we are in the middle of a pretty significant automation implementation of our own in our main facility on the East Coast, and that'll be transformative for us from a throughput and efficiency perspective. And I think it'll be pretty sexy from all the brands' perspectives. I think that you do see robots and other things, especially in non-frozen environments and non-cold environments. I think if you think about the Amazon warehouses, right? You think about some of the places that do, a Shipmonk or one of those guys that does non-perishable fulfillment. All those systems cost an awful lot more money when they have to survive in -20 type environments like our freezer. Automation and flexibility are sort of enemies, right? And so when you run a 3PL that wants to be able and capable of taking on new customers and whatever variety of stuff you have, maintaining flexibility is a really, really important aspect of what we do. So finding the balance between that and installing automation has been a laborious process.
Right. So that was about to be my comment. Yes, it transforms, it helps, but it sometimes can prevent you from bringing in a customer that had a packaging design that you didn't think of. Right. Yeah. So as a 3PL, look, if you're doing ketchup and you're only doing one type of bottle, and you're doing that type of bottle all day long, yes, you can automate that to one person doing millions of units an hour.
Right.
When it's a cake and a cookie and a pizza and et cetera, that actually needs a lot more flexibility. And that's where automation needs to be super intelligent, not running into over automating.
By the way, we just got a comment in from Sarah. She says she's one of the founders of a human grade dog food company in Toronto, Canada. Sarah, thanks so much for introducing yourself. And Donna, Esther, Haley, Jonathan, Julia, and Jan. I mean, all of you, I see you in here. So definitely would love to hear what you're building and what you're up to, so we can bring that layer in. If you have specific questions, definitely drop them in there. But you guys mentioned something about Amazon, right? And we've heard about the Amazon effect. And then we hear about the Amazon effect and how that trickles down into customer preference. Everyone, I mean, going back to the earlier point, faster, better, smarter, more efficient, et cetera, right? I mean, how necessary is that same day or 2-day shipping for brands, and especially as they want to compete and market? How do brands navigate that? And is that crucial or what?
So that's actually a discussion we have with each and every one of our brands. They all want to come in and you have to ship it. And I want same-day orders to leave until 3 p.m. that day, even though FedEx picks up at 3:30, it's okay. But it has to be immediate. But then you see that if you communicate properly to the customer and tell them, look, we'll prepare for you, meaning it won't be in stock simply waiting. We'll need a day to fulfill. Guess what? They say, okay.
Right.
You're not, and not to knock down any product, this is not, usually our customers are not mass production items, right? They're more refined, they're more pricey, they're more unique, and they're more prepared for order. If you let the customer choose, they will all choose free shipping overnight. But that's not something you can give in most of your cases. And we see a lot of brands get hit pretty hard trying to compete with Amazon. Don't. Set the expectation set properly. And what we have seen is huge customer adoption. No one says no. And if you lost the sale, that's okay if it saves you 15 credits, right? Because you couldn't get it on time, or because the carrier missed, or you didn't have the right inventory and you try to rush it through. But give yourself the time. Most products that we see, and most founders that are listening, I believe, are unique, high-end items where a customer have the realization of it is special, so it should take an extra day. We see great success with brands that do.
Yeah, I agree. I think managing customer expectations is the critical element to it. But to your question, I think that having 1 day or 2 day shipping from when it goes out is obviously critically important for the survivability of the product, right?
Right.
And I think that where we have seen customers, the one caveat to our comment before that we don't create mandates for customers, we give advice and let them pick, is when we think you're going to do something that's
food safety.
That's a better way to say it. I was going to say stupid, but food safety is a good way to say it. We had a customer who was dead set on never shipping anything express, which makes logical sense. Express is significantly more expensive than shipping things ground. However, he was willing to accept the idea that things might take 3 days to get there, right? And all you're doing is setting yourself up for significant failure of product. And so that's a problem. I don't know if you want, if Michelle, you want to go off our sort of path here and answer some of the questions that came in or not. There's a couple of them.
Yeah, well, I just saw this. I mean, I was just reading, and by the way, Bina, thank you so much for introducing yourself. Bina is the co-founder of Sugar Roti. It's an organic Indian spice blends company, and they're doing 100% compostable packages, so you can make a curry or any modern dish within an hour. I think like a tagline, free tagline, curry in a hurry, would be really exciting for everyone. But we launched in mid-Jan and are looking to understand distribution operations as we plan ahead. So this is, just great. Thank you, by the way, Bina. And then Sarah, we're having some of the challenges that Guy and Josh are addressing. We are 2 years in and looking for a similar partner in Toronto and Canada to grow with. Any partner recommendations for us? We have just sourced boxes, ice packs, temp guard, and wanting to expand across different parts of Canada. Anyways, I'm going to pause there. There's definitely more coming in here, which is really exciting. Thanks so much, everyone, for introducing yourself. But yeah, would love to, if you have any thoughts, comments for Bina.
The only thoughts we were thinking about Canadian US borders, as much as the systems are really trying to make it seamless and quick, most products get delayed between a day or two. So if you ever thought of moving between countries, either truck it across and ship it locally, or plan on a 3 to 4 day delivery. And if your product cannot sustain it, then we need to find a way in the middle.
Yeah. I would say just to Bina on the curry, we'd be happy to talk to you. I'm sure that Michelle will have her contact out there. We'd be happy to engage and see what we can do with that. To Guy's point, we probably have a Canadian. Yeah. So we don't have a Canadian, just to answer the question directly, we do not currently have a Canadian facility, but we have some customers that also have Canadian operations that we'd be happy to share a contact with.
Absolutely.
And by the way, guys, for everyone listening, we're going to share contact details with the NutriFresh team. So definitely, and then also they're going to have the list of all of you who attended. So feel free to, I mean, not feel free, I just recommend that you stay connected. And as you kind of move through different parts of your business, you know, you'll be able to connect, you'll continue the conversation. But jumping back here, I actually wanted to talk about sustainability, because this is something that's coming up on literally every part of our ecosystem, whether it's packaging, products, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fill in the blank. I'm sure everyone has their story or their lens, but would love to hear about it and how you are thinking about it from a shipping and logistics perspective, and especially also as we were talking about competition, right? I think this can be a leverage point around competition too, and even raising capital. It becomes also interesting. So anyways, I'm going to stop now, but I'd love to hear your perspective on sustainability and what brands should really be thinking about there.
So regretfully, and I'm saying that with every great intent to find a better solution, and we're working with about 4 or 5 different manufacturers to actively test their new inventions. There is nothing better for frozen products than stuff that's really bad for the earth. And over the last year and a half, we've seen great innovation, right? Great innovation of new stuff that's coming out, whether it's cornstarch or recycled denim or real good products that we're trying to now help brands be able to purchase at costs that won't break the bank, right? Because we have seen, I'll tell you a different story, an interesting story about sustainability. We had a brand that designed what we felt was the perfect box. Not a single piece of plastic. Everything was paper on paper with crinkled paper in the middle. It performed fantastically. Both of us, and we're not little people, could stand on the box and it would still stay full. Okay? So it took them 6 months to nix it, simply because it was made too well. People could not curbside recycle it.
Wow.
Right? So the comment is, yes, go for it, because listen, we have one planet and we really need to keep it. But watch out from overdoing it, because that specific box was made so well, people couldn't break it to flatten it. So
yeah,
people refused to pick it up. So the brand had to stop it. So keep in mind that everything you do, you have to A, protect your margin, and B, make sure that the customer experience is preserved.
Yeah, I think that you know, we've seen some developments in reusability of certain products.
Yeah.
There have been attempts at having reusable boxes and things like that. There's some real challenges with that. They're expensive. They cost a lot to return. They cost a lot to clean, because you can't just send them right back out. So there's some challenges to that. But there are some products out now that have a reusability by the consumer. So you get the stuff at home and you can reuse it for your own purposes, not for a reship by the same by the brand. Those are interesting. It's a challenge. The bottom line reality is, hands down, the best insulation available on the market today is still styrofoam, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, really unfortunately.
We don't use it. I don't think we have any customers that are still using styrofoam, but from a performance perspective, it's absolutely the best performing product on the market. So
for the price.
That's especially for the price. That's a real challenge.
Right.
And we're actively working with multiple manufacturers to bring an end to it.
Very cool. And by the way, we have May Lilly, who just wrote, she says she's the marketing director of ZEN, so Zen Foods, a daily fresh meal delivery service out of Southern California. And they want to expand their service to statewide, West Coast, and eventually nationally. So they're looking into distribution options. By the way, May, I shot you a note and scanning, but if there's any specific questions that you have, I mean, that's very exciting to hear. We're excited to hear about your growth, but if you have specific questions, definitely drop them in. Shifting forward, so I'd love to actually also talk about international shipping. I mean, we brushed on this earlier. A lot happening in the world right now, geopolitically and otherwise. What do brands really need to know as they look to expand? I mean, obviously Zen wants to do national, but let's talk about international. That's always exciting to
Yeah,
hear.
look, international fulfillment, international shipping of food is challenging, right? Especially perishable food. You always run the risk of getting hung up at customs wherever you're going. And that can be totally catastrophic for a given shipment. Even on US-Canadian border, let alone, sort of quote unquote real international shipping, when you're talking about flying stuff to Europe. We do have customers that do it. They understand the risk of what that looks like. But by and large, if you can figure out a way to have, outlets in country wherever you are, for perishable product, it's a better strategy. If you're doing non-perishable, where it could survive if you got hung up in customs, it's a better, that's certainly more doable.
We have a few, I'll call it semi-perishable brands that they actually do ship Europe from West Coast and from Edison.
Yeah.
These guys do well as long as they're prepared to have it spend 4 to 5 days in transit.
But you're talking about really expensive product, right? I mean, you think about it, you're talking about shipping costs that could be multiples of product costs, right? So you really need to have a specialized product for that to make sense.
I mean, just jumping on that, does it make sense as you think about then? I mean, do you have a network of international people like you that, as a company looks to scale, you can bridge that gap, and is that the way to navigate that, or okay, right?
Sure.
Okay.
What we do, but then again, what would you rather do? Pay $200 a shipment twice, or pay $5,000 to send inventory that will sit there?
Right.
That's what we mentioned earlier. That's where art takes over science.
Right. All right. That makes complete sense. I mean, I'm going to shift the gears a little bit here from way international to, probably hyper local. Last mile delivery. I'm reading about it. I've heard about it. We've talked about it. I mean, what are you seeing, and what do brands need to know when it comes to that? Is that also super expensive? Is that going to eat into my margins? I mean, what do we know?
Again, coming through us with, or someone like us with the buying power, usually you can get there within the prices of national fulfillment ground, or very, very little over that.
Actually, sorry, I'm going to jump in. Let's define last mile delivery, because that's maybe a term that everyone knows or doesn't know, but just to make sure, what is last mile delivery? How does it work?
In our book, it's the regional and the local carriers that have very limited, let's say, a 2-3 state range of distribution that will give you a more curated experience. They'll give you that there's going to be a messenger. They're going to knock on the door. They're going to make sure it's delivered. I actually like it better in some cases, mainly major metros, because when you look at a tall building, instead of just simply dropping it and walking away, you can actually make sure it got delivered, and you can get live updates if there are issues. These guys usually have a better, more interactive system with the driver. Some of them even offer you texting the driver. So I don't have an apartment number. Boom, text it.
Is this like a Postmates? Would you say Postmates is a last mile delivery?
Postmates, I would describe more like an on-demand delivery than a last mile. I would put Postmates in a category like an Uber Eats or something like that,
or a DoorDash,
right? That's more of an on-demand service than a last mile. We have a carrier that covers the New York metro area same day, right? But it's not within the hour. You're not paying. It's a different kind of service than that. The Postmates require you to have sort of micro fulfillment centers or restaurants in if not the zip code, in the very near region of what you're talking about. And what we're talking about is more regional carriers that might cover a smaller multi-state area, right? Sometimes a city area.
Got it. That's, I mean, it's good to better understand that. And by the way, too, we just had somebody else introduce themselves. We have Edgar here. He's the co-founder of AHGO. It's a virtual marketing hub. And they are subscription-based marketing and platform and community. They have tools and services. They're an incubator, though, for early stage startups. And his question was, do you have any books, courses, or videos that you recommend when it comes to process systems and scaling? I'm sure you have tons on your bookshelf, but would love to hear if you have any recommendations.
I hate to say most of our learning has come the hard way.
For the feet.
Yeah, exactly. Just doing it and paying the tuition in business rather than sort of in school on this.
Sure.
I don't know that I have anything offhand for that.
Got it. And this is another one, but it says, are you able to add a special touch to shipments?
Yeah.
Things like a handwritten note or even addressing the consumer by name or printout. This came from Dennis. By the way, Dennis, really thoughtful. So I appreciate that question coming in, but would love to hear how you navigate that.
So everything that we can automate, we absolutely do it pretty easily. So like a note, a name, all of that, a message, special delivery to print on the label on the outside of the box, we do very easily. When you get to handwritten, it's who's handwriting? Right?
Guy, are you offering to write handwritten notes for your?
Everything I look like stick figures. Trust me, I'm the last one you want writing on your behalf. but what I'm saying is up to a point and consider the price, right? If you need me to hire someone with calligraphy skills to buy, I can. But do you want?
So let me just add, I would strongly encourage, with certain exceptions, that everybody think about scalability, right? So, to Guy's point, if I can print it onto the label or print it as a drop-in or whatever, we do have customers that have done things like that are even personalized. It might say to Michelle, but it's a printed and it comes as a drop-in with your pick ticket, right? Or something like that. When you start getting into handwritten, our answer to almost every request is yes, but are you sure you're willing to pay that price, right? To Guy's point, if I have to hire somebody with good handwriting to sit there and write notes, and there's a bandwidth issue. So if you're focused on scaling, unless you're selling things that are very, very high ticket boxes, right? If you're the A5 Wagyu beef vendor, right, who only has dreams of selling, a handful of shipments, a week, you can probably handle that. If you have dreams of scaling your business, there was a customer several years ago that was it was in the pet food space, let's say, and they had a very personalized. They have moved away from their personalized aspect of their business, and they've grown phenomenally since.
Yeah, nearly 10x just by not personalizing.
By not doing it.
And again, saying all that, we're not simply saying no. We find a how-to. Yes, we leave on a pre-printed section of your pick ticket, of your packing slip, a personalized note section.
Right.
Where our systems can bring it in, it will simply be printed.
We also do things like, more often than not, if you're looking for the personalized touch, sometimes you can get to the personalized touch enough by categorizing customers. So a new customer gets a welcome package, and that can be identified on a pick ticket where, okay, there's a code that the pickers understand they need to put a welcome packet in. That's different and unique from the rest of the boxes. Or a birthday, or whatever the case might be. You have specialized but standardized concepts. Drop-ins. Oh, there we go. So specialized but specialized but standardized, sort of standard special drop-ins. Those work well.
By the way, so one, you're saying there's a chance, but two, and when you're thinking about scalability, maybe think
exactly.
Right. And it's funny, it's making me think of SMS. On another one of our sessions, we had a long conversation around SMS, but you really can. There's a company called Dirty Lemon, and they built their business on SMS. And it's just another way that you can, one, create, and bridging this actually to your earlier point around transparency and setting the right expectation and stay high communication. I think there's other ways that you can be scalable, or take a scalable approach and think more scalably by communicating and personalizing the communication, but also staying high touch with people so they feel cared for and thought after, versus having to hire a calligraphist. Anyways, I appreciate the guy that you, one, offered yourself, and two, offered to hire a calligraphy.
I'm not responsible for the results if I write it.
But this is great to know. Actually, just jumping back into something else that I had read about, just because, I think it's super interesting as we think more tech forward and some of the bells and whistles that might come into your world. I read that mobile apps and RFIDs are trending when it comes to 3PLs. What does that really mean for brands? What is that? I mean, what should people be thinking about there?
So the way we're looking at it from the perspective of mobile apps is we're looking to encompass all the experience under one, creating great comfort, right? So if you're looking at 9 facilities and everything is condensed into one data point, into one dashboard, into one activity location, it makes your life as an operator who's remote from their product much, much easier. As far as RFID, again, how fast your product is moving, right? If it's sitting there for a while, or if it even justifies the 15 cents per tag, does the RFID, is it really worth it? It's all a matter of cost and what benefit you get out of it, right? So again, if you're a higher ticket item that expects to sit there for a while, absolutely RFID it. If you're sending in a container and everything ships in 3 days and it's a less expensive product, guess what? Even though technology is there, doesn't mean you have to use it. So that's everything with innovation, right? Is you need to justify the use case before implementing technology for the sake of implementing technology.
Well, and it has to be uniformly compatible, right? So you can put the RFID stickers on everything, but the warehouse you're going into has to understand that and has to have the same catalog. So there's some implementation hurdles to that as well.
This question actually also came in. So what is a good short-term goal for growth on an entry-level business timeline period, like, launch to first 6 months when it comes to, your world?
It's pretty diverse and it's more driven by the brand. We can go along any speed the brand wants to run at. We've seen brands who came in and shipped 50 shipments their first week, going into 10,000 a week on 6 months in. We've seen brands that are in 500, but guess what? They expected it. So it's also okay, right? It's how much fuel does the brand want to put in their marketing machine? Are you going to advertise? Is your product widespread and going to be easily understood? Do you need to educate? So when we sit on the onboarding, everybody comes in with the exact same numbers in their projections. It's as if everybody downloaded the same template and simply changed the name. It's our job to tell them, guys, we can get you from here to 10,000. So we usually onboard in about 2 weeks, right? It takes you another 2 weeks before the brand really understands how it works. From then, it's up to them. If they tell me I need 1,000 next week, they'll have it. They tell me I need 5,000 next week, they'll have it as well. Will they have the sales? Will they have the demand? Will they have the product? And yes, and the spend on media.
So right? We're coming up on time, but I actually really want to ask this because this is something that as we've worked with vendors and different relationships at FounderMade, and also just in general with different partners that exist, culture is super important. And so obviously you have the capability. Obviously, I mean, you've been in the industry and space, you created all the efficiencies, but what are, you know, the top 3 things that define your culture as an organization, and how, you know, you work with your partners?
So I think first and foremost, it's collaborative. As Josh said earlier, and as you've heard me and from brands heard from me, it's always yes. But it's how are we going to do whatever it is you want us to do? Which, by the way, will sometimes mean I will have to say no to protect you from you. When we started, as when NutriFresh was younger in a turnaround, we didn't know, right? It was always yes and yes and yes and yes and yes. And we ended up doing a lot, not really well for anyone. Once you focus, and we recommend our brands to focus as well, the SKU counts, the number of boxes, the offerings, even though sales will say we need more flavors for more to choose. I would tell you, focus what you're doing. We will be there to collaborate with you and walk with you. And we want our brands to feel as we are a part of them, right? They'll call Josh for financial advice. They'll call Andy, who's another person on our team, for data analytics. They'll call our ops guys who say, "Hey guys, I want to change a box. What do I do?" And that's who we want to be in a long answer to a short question.
By the way, thank you so much. So we're officially, you know, it's 2:01, so we're just over time. And, you know, as we sign off, is there any final words, comments, things you'd like to leave the community with?
You guys are doing fantastic. You're creating an industry. Everything that people are doing now and being taken for granted did not exist 3 years ago, right? We didn't have the customers. We didn't have the abilities, not because we didn't, there were none. And the guys who fought through creating those carrier relationships and creating the customer understanding and expectations, this is your time now. We're seeing great growth heading our way. And just make sure to focus your efforts, work on what's good for you, not on what you want your customer to believe it is.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think the trends are there, right? I mean, our industry is growing, you know, in good double-digit growth. We're probably 20 to 23% as an industry growth rates. You know, I'd say, as Guy said, focus on what creates a sustainable business, right? How do you make money? Understand what things look like and how you get from here to there. You know, and you know, look, whatever's working for you as you grow from 0 to something is going to be the core of what helps you grow from something to 10 times something. So.
Great tips, by the way. Thank you so much to, I mean, Guy, Joshua, you're amazing. Also to our attendees, May, Dennis, Haley, Sarah. I mean, I can keep going, but thank you so much for just sharing a bit about your story. Also, Curry in a Hurry. I think that was a great, great takeaway from this. I'd like to see that ordered with a personalized note. Thank you. But seriously, thank you all for being here. Please keep the conversation going with the NutriFresh team. If we can pop up the screen, we do have their handles listed here. So visit at NutriFreshServices.com or contact them at info@NutriFreshServices.com. If you enjoyed today, there's more coming for you with upcoming events to include our Discovery Show at Home. It's happening on June 10th. NutriFresh will be there, so you can obviously hear more from them. We're also going to be having partners like Credo, FatFitFun, Clearco. We also have Sierra. She is if you remember her, she was the hip hop star gone entrepreneur. So definitely check it out. You can register. It is available on our website, and it is our marquee event. So for those of you who miss our live events and you used to come, this is the virtual version of that. Just following, we also have the Future of Beauty and Wellness show on September 23rd. And finally, the D2C Founder Executive Summit on December 9th. So definitely get involved and register. keep the conversation going. That is my final word. If you sat through this whole session, Joshua and Guy are obviously incredible experts and have gone through the ringer to save you all the time. So please, please, please. And a special thanks goes to you all at NutriFresh and the team behind you and Founder Made. Megan, I know you're running this session behind the scenes for us. So thank you to all the teams that are supporting and putting this together.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We had a great
you.
time being here.
Absolutely. All right. That's it for today's Power Hour. I'm Michelle Venezio. Keep building the future and see you next time. Take care.